Hello and welcome back to the Chatcade podcast, where I discuss media in the forms of reviews and topical-based discussions. I'm your host, Dranky Thomas Hughes, and today I'm focusing on a review on a game I've literally just finished. By the time this video goes out, it would have been like maybe a week or so in terms of when I finished it, but in terms of actually releasing, this is just like a few days after the series finished. And that is going to be a review on Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, the 2024 single player / multiplayer. There is the multiplayer aspect, online service game that got very mixed reviews upon launch. Obviously, before we get into the actual talking of the game, there's a couple of things I want to bring up. Obviously, I did say, was it during the most anticipated? Was it back into last year? It was doing the Craven one, I'm pretty certain. I did speak about it. Obviously, for January, I'd be covering the Venom movies and then moving into Morbius. I'm pushing them back by a week. I did bring it up in the actual final video on the Suicide Squad one. I'm going to push it back a week so I can slot this one in. So those are coming. They're just a week back. And I'm pretty much that pretty much covers me apart from one Friday in February. So as I'm currently planning to do the Venom trilogy, Morbius. End of February, I'm planning to cover the Monster Hunter movie because the Monster Hunter game coming out. I've just got to try and figure out something to slot in the middle there. So I've got one slot in between these Marvel movies and that movie, but I'll have a look into that. And the other thing I want to bring up, if you're wondering why I'm wearing, if you're watching obviously this on YouTube, if you're wondering why I'm wearing a Baby Yoda hat, it's because I can't find my fucking beanie anywhere. And this is the first beanie I could find available, so I'm currently got flappy ears because of this. So Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is, for starters, it's a game I got for free. Middle of 2024, I think it was the middle. Obviously, I think it was during the Amazon Prime Day stuff. They, obviously, because they have Prime Gaming where you can get, just like Epic Games, you can get some free games on there every now and again. Not always like massive games. Mostly it's older games, and then every now and again you do get, like Epic, you do get one game that kind of stands out in terms of being big, and this was that kind of one. It was a free game during the Prime Day stuff, and I picked it up because I was like, I do want to check it out. I don't really want to pay for it because it being a live service game, there's always the worry of once they've had enough of this game, they'll shut the servers down and that's it, it's game over. Especially for the fact that it's all online. I know I've done a single player playthrough of it, but it's still via online servers, which is probably lucky that in January, I think it's supposed to be January they're doing it. Obviously they're adding offline servers, so the game's going out its multiplayer phase and just going single player. So obviously when they do eventually shut down the multiplayer servers, which eventually they probably will. So they're not yet, but when they eventually more than likely will, you still have the access to the single player side of it. So I would say at the moment you can still play multiplayer until they get bored and say, "Fuck this, it's wasting money, shut down the servers," because it is Warner Bros. We're talking about here. So yeah, obviously I was always worried about that, and obviously that's the one thing. Obviously, like when I've spoken to Connor and that about, it's just like I don't really want to put money into a game that could just, that's it, it's gone. So it was always that worry. But when they gave it for free, I was like, I'm jumping on that bandwagon. So I fucking picked it up. Obviously, it's through the Epic Games Store. So obviously, annoyingly, I can't play on my Steam Deck. So I was just like, okay, I'll eventually sit down and play it. And then during this, obviously, the festive period, I was like, okay, one-shot games. One of them can be the Suicide Squad game. And I did like 40, 50 minutes on it. And I was just like, I kind of want to play a bit more. So I sat down and played the rest. And I covered it across 12 videos. 12, like, pushing, like, hour-long videos. Just obviously, that's just chock full of just repetitive gameplay. Because that's the thing with this game. It can get very repetitive. Because it's just, a lot of the missions are very samey. Even when obviously they're bringing in like these other characters, these extra characters that are like the side ones, so like Penguin, Poison Ivy, Toymaker, Rick Flag, Lex Luthor. I think that's all. Oh, and Gizmo. All these characters, pretty much their missions are near enough the exact same. There's some missions that are literally just copy and paste, just slightly tweaked. Like, for example, Flag and Penguin. I've done a mission on both of them, even Toymaker actually, but I'll stick with Flag and Penguin. I had a mission for Flag where it's like, some of the Argus agents are trapped. It'll be there in a bus. You'll send out a signal. You'll defeat loads of enemies. A blip will pop up in front of you and be like, this is where there's obviously one of the soldiers are hiding. You go up there, you kill a bunch of people. I kill a bunch of enemies, get the, obviously, soldier out, drag him all the way to the bus, put him in the bus, and then you keep going, depending on how many characters you have to collect. Normally it's about 3 minimum, and sometimes 4, and it's it keeps going and going and going. And Penguin had the exact same mission twice actually. And it's like, my gang is out there, and you literally have to do the same, but instead of obviously soldiers, you're collecting Penguin's gang. Was it soldiers or was it civilians actually? I think it might be civilians. But then Toymaker, when he came into it, he literally had a mission very similar as well, because most of his thing is to leave a bus. So you collect them and put them in the bus again. So it can be repetitive in that. And then there's some missions where you've got to escort a vehicle to a certain point. But during the way along the point, enemies will spawn and you got to take them out because they're locking onto the said vehicle. So there's a lot of repetitiveness in that, which can be a bit annoying. But I think what for me works for this game is its story. I like the story that it did. I love the characters in it. I love the dialogue interactions between them. The banter is really good. It's kind of what you want from Suicide Squad. Because obviously, if you watched any of the Suicide Squad movies they've done in the past, one of the things that's always going for them is like the bickering between them. Because unlike, say, like most hero teams, yes, there's always bickering because they're kind of like a family, but they still work together perfectly. Whereas with the squad, they're so opposite because them being villains, they're always going to be more at each other's throats with the possibility of, killing each other. So that's what this does well for me. Their interactions really work. I like the choices for the characters as well. Obviously, Deadshot, King Shark, Harley, and Boomerang. I do like those choices. I think those are really solid choices that, as I say, they do work perfectly. Obviously, you got King Shark, who's this big idiot who doesn't really know much about anything. Boomerang, who's also an idiot, but in his own way, his own drunken way. Obviously, you got Harley, who's just, he's just Harley, and then Deadshot, who, he's this actual contracted killer that isn't really as idiotic as the rest. So he's probably the one that's not as idiotic, which, makes sense that one is going to be a bit more serious than the rest. But I think those are perfect choices for this story to unfold. I like also the idea of the whole plot is Brainiac's taken over. The squad have not only just got to kill Brainiac, they've got to go through one by one the Justice League to get to Brainiac because they're under his control. You've got to one by one kill them. Flash, Green Lantern, Batman, Superman. You've got to go through all of them to kill them. And they do a really good thing regarding Wonder Woman where she's not part of this mind control stuff. She's also trying to fight the League, but she's trying to do it in her own way. So you got the League Suicide Squad, their whole plan is literally just put a bullet in every single one of their heads. Simple as that. Makes sense. It's who they are. Whereas Wonder Woman sees they more as, these are my friends. I don't want to hurt my friends. They're in there somewhere. I've just got to find a way to unlock them. So there's always that tension between Wonder Woman and the squad because of their methods of trying to stop the invasion, trying to stop the League. So I like a lot of that. I need to stop flaying my arms around. I do like a lot of that aspect of the game. I think my other problem with this game, apart from as well as the repetitiveness, I think the annoying aspect of making just every character you use a gun and then have a melee weapon. I don't like that aspect. I know the Avengers game got shit on heavily because it was just like this. It was fucked at launch, and it didn't do it wasn't the greatest of games. and obviously that itself as well got taken offline to an extent, and obviously got taken off stores. At least with that, each character felt like you were playing. Obviously, you were embodying that character. So Hulk, you went around punching stuff. Iron Man, you flew around, obviously repulsor blasting stuff. Captain America, you're punching, throwing your shield. Widow, guns. Hawkeye's bow. Thor, obviously the hammer and the lightning attacks. And then all these other characters they added in. They felt like those characters. Whereas with these, the only one of these, realistically, for me, that should be having guns. Deadshot, for starters. His whole thing is guns. He's literally a fucking contracted assassin that his whole thing is fucking guns on his wrists and fucking carrying snipers and, you name it, he's fucking got it. Like, him, I understand. Harley, to an extent as well, I understand her revolver because she's very known for obviously carrying that revolver around. Along with like a baseball bat or a giant mallet. I'm trying to see it. Wrong side. I'm kind of blocking the mallet. You can't actually see it. My fucking Halloween mask is currently on it. Obviously, there's a mallet on the floor of Hayden's. That's basically a Harley one. So she's obviously known for carrying something like that. That to an extent I can understand. But when I'm looking at characters like King Shark, I'm looking at characters like Boomerang. When playing as them, with King Shark, I kind of want to be more like how the Hulk is in the Avengers game. I want to be using more brute force. I want to be punching stuff. I want to be using the teeth. And then Boomerang, well, his whole thing's throwing boomerangs. I'd love to fucking, obviously, melee weapon him with boomerangs, but then also distance thrown with them. I'd love for this game to have done that. I'd love for it to actually make it feel like you are that character. Whereas, when I say what they went with, it wasn't that. For the story-wise, and for the gameplay aspect of what they went with, they had obviously you got no choice but to have guns, especially when you're fighting the League. The whole point of fighting them is you can't do it by hand. You need to use your guns. You need to be fucking zipping around the fucking area, obviously ducking and dodging, not trying to get killed, while also gunning them down. Because if you don't, then, well, you're fucked. You can't do much else. I understand that, but at the same time, I'm thinking, well, couldn't you have tweaked the game to make it feel like you were playing as that character, not just that character wielding a gun? Which is a shame, especially since it's from Rocksteady, who did the Arkham games. The Arkham games made you feel like you were Batman. The hand-to-hand combat, the stealth aspect, the flying around the city, the driving the fucking tank, you name it. Those games made you feel like you were Batman, and I do kind of really want to play those games again now. But this, in terms of roleplay aspects, you don't feel like you're the character you're playing as. Again, the exception is Deadshot. That is the exception, realistically. Harley to an extent, but Deadshot's the exception of he fits this game perfectly. The others don't. But then that's the problem of going with a game where your whole aspect of it, your whole draw to it is it's a gun game. If you're doing that, you maybe should have just gone with other characters that were suited for this. But then again, you do that and you'd be the case of, these characters two are the same. Like, if you had Deadshot, Bloodsport, I know they put Deathstroke in it eventually in the expansion stuff, but still Deathstroke, and I can't think of another character off the top of my head, but 4 characters that their whole aspects are they're assassins. You get the issue of that this is the same character. What's the fucking, you know what I mean? What's the fucking point? Whereas this, yeah, you have the uniqueness of their different characters. They have different personalities, but it's just the overutilization of it's a gun game. It fucking kind of just draws me out a bit. But I say, other than that, I like what it did. It's one of those ones where it's an above average game. I wouldn't say it's like this masterpiece of a game. I wouldn't say it's a game where, I'm jumping the gun out, wanting to sit down and play it again from the start. It's not one of those games. It's one of those ones where I play it once, that's fine. I've actually played it. I might sit down and do the extra stuff because obviously there is the season stuff. So obviously you can get Joker, Mrs. Freeze, Deadshot's daughter, I can't remember her fucking name, and Deathstroke. I mainly wanted to do it then just to get to Deathstroke. I can literally fucking just jump straight to Deathstroke in general. The other characters for me just aren't the draw, and that's the problem with this game as well. It had a rocky launch, and then they started doing the extra stuff, the season stuff, and it got even rockier because they put out characters that no one really wanted. They put a rendition of the Joker, which, okay, makes sense. Throw the Joker in. It's the Joker. He's a big part of the Arkham games. But the version they went for was just not the best. And then they went, obviously, and gender swapped Mr. Freeze to Mrs. Freeze. Then they threw in, obviously, Deadshot's daughter. Obviously, two characters that no one really give a shit about. There's plenty of actual squad members that they could have put in, which would have been a draw for people. And then they saved the best for last, Deathstroke. But by the time you got to that, they were literally like, yeah, we're not doing it anymore. That's it. There was literally so many characters that could have fit this a lot better. Obviously, instead of doing the... I get the idea, though. It's the Elseworld stuff. That's why you're able to do this, obviously, alternate Mr. Freeze, obviously Mrs. Freeze. It's because of the Elseworld stuff. And I'm guessing the same with Deadshot's daughter. It's because of she's from a different universe. Okay, I understand that aspect of it. I get the idea of going for the multiverse side of it. But at the same time, there's probably other characters you could have brought in, maybe not even from these multiverses, from the main universe, and just had them work for it. Like, instead of Mrs. Freeze, you could have had Killer Frost. I'm trying to think of some other character. Obviously, I always spoke about, obviously, since you got King Shark, Killer Croc would have been a good one. Again, that would have required the multiverse side of it, but still, Killer Croc would have been a good one. Bane would have been a good one. There's plenty of DC characters out there that would have been fucking perfect for this. But, of course, they just went with characters that no one really wanted, and by that point, everyone had dropped off. I mean, the only reason people actually started playing it again is because, as I say, they went free at one point on Amazon for a little while, and then during some sales not long ago, the game was like a couple of quid, and that's the only time that the player count was actually like in the thousands, just because people brought it for like a couple of quid and like, fuck it, it's what it's like, and they started playing it. So it's just one of those ones where they shot themselves in the foot plenty of times, and that hindered it. And I know, obviously, in the story, the killing of Batman, spoiler alert, how they did it was another shot in the foot for many people. I myself didn't mind it. I liked how they handled a lot of them. Obviously, the Flash, you had Boomerang, who was his nemesis, and obviously there was a lot of stuff to do with them. Green Lantern, it was Deadshot, who was his nemesis. Batman, it was Harley, and Superman was just there. No, it wasn't really a nemesis for any of them. He was just there. So obviously King Shark was probably the only one that didn't really have a nemesis situation. But for me, how they killed them, it worked. Obviously, Flash mainly died obviously during just the battle in general. Obviously, Green Lantern, it was more of the Green Lantern and Batman, more of the aftermath situations. But I do give credit because I did enjoy those battles. I enjoyed the battle with the Flash, obviously utilising Speed Force counter to stop him. Green Lantern, I like the idea of they had Yellow Lantern batteries to, destroy the Green Lantern power. And then, obviously, with Batman, I liked what they did with him because his battle was more to do with the Scarecrow Fear Toxin, so he got to use that, and he became like this giant nightmare-looking Batman, which was pretty cool, and obviously you had to keep ducking and dodging. And then Superman is more the case of gold kryptonite was the only way to stop him. So I liked a lot of those battles. I thought they were pretty cool. I liked a lot of the missions, to be fair, in terms of obviously revolving the Justice League. So the first time you encountered Batman, that fucking mission was horrifying in terms of, I was like edge of my seat. It's like, Jesus Christ, this is like playing a horror game. Which when I spoke to Hayden, she was like, well, it makes sense being like that because of, to criminals like these, Batman is this kind of like monstrous demon at times. So it makes sense that he'd be, just going after them and fucking trying to kill them. And I liked that mission as well, where obviously after a while of walking around as your one character, Batman would take you out, and you'd jump to the next character, and it'd be the same situation with that until you got to the point of Harley was the last one standing. And obviously they did the exact same thing then with the later one with the fear toxin stuff. You've got to access the fear toxin, and you got to do it one by one. And once you do, obviously that character is out, and you play as the next one, and again until you get to Harley, Batman's actual nemesis in this situation. So I like how they handled the Batman missions. They were really fucking well done. I like the idea of I liked how they handled the rivalry between, let's say, Boomerang and Flash, and then obviously Green Lantern and Deadshot, because obviously Lantern's the reason why Deadshot's even in prison. So I like the idea of Deadshot's pissed and wants to kill him because of, he threw him in prison. Whereas obviously Lantern, despite his corrupt, obviously, yes, I know he's corrupt obviously because of the Brainiac stuff, but at the same time, his whole thing is, well, I'm going to put you down again, for Brainiac, basically. And so I like the build-ups to these missions. I liked a lot of their missions specifically. And so I liked a lot of the stuff to do with the squad. And Waller was pretty cool as well. I liked how menacing she was. I mean, there's that one scene when she's like kills this guy, and then just goes crazy with a gun, and her face is dripping of blood, and it's just like, fucking hell, that just like sums up how evil Waller is. And obviously, I mean, I feel like a lot of moments sum up how the fact that these are still villains. I mean, there's a scene when Boomerang injects Ivy in the neck with a nanobomb, and he's like, well, you don't see it, but he says, oh, I already did that, and he's just like, dude, what the fuck? Like, these three characters are like arguing, like, I don't remember when I inject her because she's just a kid, but at the same time, he's like, oh, I've already done it, and they're like, what the fuck, man? That's just despicable. So I like the fact that obviously it's still very obvious that these are still villains, despite the fact that they are technically trying to save the world. So I like that they constantly showcase that. It wasn't just a case of ignoring the fact that these are villains. It's fully fucking blatant that these are villains, not just from some of these little actions, but for the fact that they're literally killing the Justice League. Yes, I know they're corrupted, but they're still just like executing them like there's no tomorrow. And there's definitely some really good like cutscenes in this. I mean, the stuff with Wonder Woman's really good, especially when she's fighting Superman. That whole sequence, because obviously you have the cutscene when it starts, and then you just go through the city as you're slowly going doing one of the missions where you're fucking trailing a truck trying to keep it safe. Obviously, this is all going on around you, and then the big fight happens right at the end, which has this like really cool moment when Superman just goes full fucking supernova, his heat beams. It's just, there's a lot to really like regards to the cutscenes in this game. I just think the problem is, which I spoke to Hayden, obviously, I think I mentioned to Connor as well, they obviously wanted to stick with it being part of the Arkham universe because obviously it's Rocksteady, and that's Arkhamverse is what made them, and it makes sense to utilize that base to get people to come and play this game. Oh, like when they dropped the trailer at that DC fandom thing a couple of years ago, was it like during 2020? Was it or something like 2021? They dropped that the little like cinematic trailer, and it was like, oh, it's Rocksteady, it's Arkhamverse, Suicide Squad are involved, and they're going after the Justice League because they're mind controlled by Brainiac. Straight away, I was drawn in. I was like, this sounds fucking amazing. Obviously, it got a lot of people talking, but obviously, the problem was then when they undercooked the game and it just didn't hit the way that everyone hoped it would have, everyone expected it to. Then you got the problem of people being like, this is tainting this fucking like perfect trilogy, because the Arkham trilogy is just fucking perfect. So you got the problem then of this game hasn't done very well. It hasn't been received very well. They've literally fucking killed off the main part of the Arkham universe. So people are going to look at that and go, well, this has just then tainted what we've basically enjoyed throughout this trilogy, and even quadrilogy really, because obviously you got the Arkham Origins game, so it's really tainted that game series. But I don't think it's tainted it fully. I definitely think they probably should have just not set it during the Arkham verse. They should have done the Gotham Knights approach of setting it in its own universe. Because I know that game failed, but I would rather go back and sit through that again, because that to me feels obviously very close to the Arkham games in terms of its obviously combat mechanics. Obviously, no, it's not exactly the same, but it feels more like you are playing as these characters compared to this one. So I definitely would rather sit back through that. I mean, I still haven't finished it. I still need to go back to it at some point. So it's a shame that basically they did 2 back-to-back big DC games that obviously both announced at that event and both just did not live up to the hype of what people hoped for it. Because realistically, obviously, the Gotham Knights one, the hype was, it's like you can play co-op, you can be one of these 4 Batman, obviously, family characters, great. Just didn't hit with a lot of people. Same with this one, set in the Arkhamverse, made by Rocksteady. It's, got 4 big Suicide Squad characters, and they're going to fight the Justice League. It just didn't, again, hit with everyone. So it's just one of those problems where these two, obviously this game, it was like very anticipated, but when they started actually revealing the gameplay, when they started showing stuff, people got drawn out. And when it finally came out, there was a lot of issues with it at launch. People got drawn out even further, which I say it's a shame because it's not terrible, but it's just not great. It's one of those ones where it's just above average. There's a lot of content in it, but a lot of the content is just repetitive. I mean, it sums it up by the fact that when you get to the end of the game and you're going after Brainiac, they're like, there's 13 Brainiacs. You only need 1 to finish the story, which I'll get to in a minute. But then there's these other 12 that you need to go and do. So I get why that says, because it being this, obviously, live service game that needs stuff to keep drawing you back in. So it makes sense that you'd have to go through these other worlds and deal with other Brainiacs. It's just very clearly, obviously, they probably could have done that a lot differently. Probably just, instead of doing it within the story, being like, there's like fucking 13 Brainiacs, that could have just been like the 1 Brainiac, and then post stories like, these other worlds need help. Why don't you go there and deal with their Brainiacs? But it is what it is, basically. But yeah, talking about Brainiac, obviously that's the big end fight. Kind of underwhelming for me, the big fight was. He basically just turns into the Flash, mocks, obviously, the Flash's catchphrase, and you just got to do what you did with the Flash mission when you kill him to Brainiac, basically. But the only difference is he summons hordes of enemies every now and again. He blasts down his, obviously, tentacles from his ship blasts at you every now and again. So obviously it adds more obstacles than the Flash one, but it's basically just the Flash mission again. It's just like, couldn't you have done anything else? Couldn't you actually just utilized him as Brainiac? Because I feel like you could have done mission 1, the first Brainiac, since there is multiple. First Brainiac could have been a normal Brainiac in terms of his combat. Everything about it could have been just simple Brainiac. Obviously using the tendrils, using the lasers and shit like that. And then these Elseworld Brainiacs, that's when you could have threw in the aspects of, this one can turn into the Flash, this one can turn into the Batman, this one can turn into Superman, Green Lantern. And then obviously you utilize those characters' attacks with Brainiac's own abilities anyway. So I feel like that stuff could have been saved for the obviously for the other Brainiacs, not the first Brainiac you fight, because it just felt very underwhelming. I like what they did to get to it, because obviously you go to Earth 2 and you got to do 2 missions to get you enough power to break through the shields, which is the same as when you're out of the world. You've got to do these other missions to get the points to then go to break into this other world. And I say, when you're in this world, you've got to do these missions to then break into Brainiac's force field. So I like, there's a lot of build up, basically. So it does take a little while to get through, and it gives you half hour to do it. At least the first one did. And it gives you that half hour to get into the Brainiac fight, and then you just got basically as much time as you need. So I like the build up. Obviously, it did. Yes, it's repetitive, but it does work well with this game. It's just that when you get to the Brainiac fight, the first one, it just feels very underwhelming. The cutscene afterwards is pretty funny. And and pretty brutal with just the one shot to the head. It's just the actual fight. I felt like they could have done more with that instead of what they actually did. It just, I don't know. I was just a bit underwhelmed with it, which is a shame. But then again, it kind of sums this game up. It's underwhelming. It's not outstanding. It's got pros and cons. Mostly, it's got enough pros and cons to balance the game out in terms of feel for it. It's like, for example, the South Park game obviously that I did recently on the channel as well. Pro, it's South Park. Another pro would be the humor is fucking there. It's hilarious. The graphics are interesting. They're a lot different to the other ones, which, you know, it swaps it up a little bit. The con is the gameplay is very ass, and I'm not a big fan of the card mechanics of the game. So it's one of those ones where you say you got for me the pro, the story, the characters, and some of the fights are pretty decent. As I say, decent cutscenes. The music's fucking badass at times as well. Whereas the con is gameplay can get repetitive at times. Final boss fight was very underwhelming. The game itself is just overall very undercooked. And so, which is a shame because I was looking forward to this when they first announced it. When obviously it finally came out, so when the build up to it coming out, I dropped off because of a lot of the stuff about it. Obviously, a lot of the gameplay being shown. Obviously, I did put it in my top 10 most anticipated 2024 games at the start of last year. I think I put it like at the back end of it because I was like, I still want to check it out. But obviously, when it got close to the date, I was like, I'm not going to buy it on fucking launch. I'm going to hold off. And then if I eventually when it went free, that's the only time I really touched it. And I'm glad I didn't buy it at launch. I would have been very pissed off if I fucking spent as much as this game was when it's just not as good as what it could have been. So yeah, I feel like that just pretty much sums it up. There's just ones that they could have done so much with it, but they just didn't, and it just sadly didn't hit as well as the Arkham games did from Rocksteady. And I can understand why they've got to the point now of we've done one season of it. It's not even worth fucking putting the money in trying to carry this game on, because yes, we've got a few people buying it now and a few people playing it, but they're only playing it and buying it because of how cheap it was. We're not getting that much from this, so there's no point us actually pumping any more money into doing a second season with more characters. So I can understand why they've got to that point and stopped development on the game, because it doesn't make sense to keep throwing more money into a game that's not making it. Similar to what the Avengers game did, it got to a point of they were like, we're going to finish the roadmap we've set because we've got this roadmap up already here. We're going to finish this, but then that's it. We're not doing any more, which is similar to what they've done here. We've set one season. This is what we're giving you. We're just not giving you any more after this because it's just not worth it on our side of view financially, which makes sense to me. So yeah, obviously, if I give this rating, I've been debating if because I'm gonna go back to my to the point ratings in terms of just being like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 instead of doing the fucking 5.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm gonna stop that and just go back to my original rating of just straight to the point. Especially with this one. I don't know if I'll do it for everything, but at the moment I'm going to do it with this one because I don't know exactly where to the point I want to go with this in terms of specific points. I just know an overall score I want to give this. I just don't know the fine details of, is it a 0.3, is it a 0.4, 0.5? I don't know that, so I'm just going to stick to the basic point for this. So I'm going to give Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League a 6 out of 10. It's not shit, and I wouldn't say it's mediocre. I'd say it's just above average. I think those pros for me just slightly push it into that above average region, and I think for me it's like mid ground of the 6, maybe. Mid to like not like maybe like a push, like a 6.8 at a push. But yeah, it's just one of those ones where it's just it had so much potential, but it failed to deliver on said potential. Which I say is a shame for the fact that this is the same universe as the Arkham games, from the same creators of the Arkham games. It's such a shame that it just never lived up to the hype of those 3 games. 4 if you count Origins, which wasn't the Rocksteady game, but still 4 if you count Origins. So yeah, obviously, if you've played Suicide Squad Kill Justice League, put your thoughts in the comments below. Did you like it? Didn't you like it? What could they have done better? What characters would you have liked to have seen them added if they continued doing development on the game? Because there's plenty of DC characters out there that could have easily been added as extra characters. I just don't like what they did with it in terms of, yes, I know the characters are free technically, but you have to grind in-game to get the currency if you don't buy the currency to actually buy the character. That to me is kind of annoying. Just give me the fucking character for free. Your game's fucked. Just give me the character for free, please. But yeah, so is there any characters you would have liked to have seen them add to this game? And yeah, obviously you can check out the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Audible, etc., etc. You can check out the actual video on YouTube. You can check out the entire series of me covering the game on YouTube. They are all available now to watch. And so next week I'm going to be starting wrapping up the Venomverse reviews. And so I'm going to be doing the Venom trilogy over the next 3 weeks, and then finish off with Morbius. So next week I'll be moving on to the 2018 it came out? It was 2018, wasn't it? Because it was the same year as the Spider-Verse movie. So yeah, the 2018 kickoff for a universe that no one ever asked for, which obviously is Venom. So do check out that next week. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this review, and I do hope to see you next time. Goodbye.
If you like what you've seen, don't be afraid to throw us a little like and subscribe. That's always very appreciated over here. And, well, I'll see you on the next video.